Hey guys, how's it going? Dave Noriega with Debbie Dujanovic, and we're happy to be here with you. It's Facebook Live.
That's right.
It's continuing the conversation. One of the things we love to do is pick a topic where we just feel like we haven't had enough to say about it, and we try to say it all here on Facebook Live.
So today on the show, which by the way, our show airs Monday through Thursday, 9 to 11 on KSLNewsradio 102.7 FM. We talked about this $10,000 fine that the governor talked about on Sunday night when he laid out his new plan to deal with the spike of COVID-19 cases. One of the things that came out, which I thought was the heaviest hammer I've heard yet in this spike, is how to find a path to punishment for people who just don't comply, Dave. And one of the things he brought up was a $10,000 fine per occurrence for people who violate the orders, the public health orders, like the mask mandates or the social distancing rules. And I really felt like the governor was speaking specifically to these party organizers that are bringing groups of people together, or movies, and sort of, going to movies and sitting together in protest of the mask mandates. Not so much for the guy like you who happens to walk down the street without a mask because he left it in his car. What do you think?
Right. Yeah. And when I first heard the governor talk about this, and he said $10,000, I thought he was talking to me. And I remember
you were scared.
I was scared. I started thinking, a $10,000 fine? Like, if I'm walking with my family and we're all unmasked, he said $10,000 per occurrence.
Right.
Like, was it going to be like a $50,000 fine for the Noriegas because, they went to Lowe's and wanted to buy some 2x4s? Expensive trip to the store, but I think you're right, Deb. I think he was talking, the intent was to target these party organizers or these protesters that have been gathering and have been doing it for several months. And he's trying to put a stop to that.
We had Connor Boyack. He is with the Libertas Institute, which does a lot of lobbying on Capitol Hill. And a lot of the lobbying they do is to attempt to get government out of our lives. Less government in our lives. And Connor Boyack called the show today. He made a Facebook post that really caught your attention. He talked about that $10,000 fine being way out of line. So we want to also encourage you to weigh in on this. Is this $10,000 fine too much? Or is it just right? Or do more businesses need to be fined? But let's listen to what Connor told us during this show so you can understand where he's coming from regarding this $10,000 fine.
That is not an accurate reflection of what the law actually says. What's happening here is that existing law says that if anyone violates a public health order, they're subject to the $10,000 fine. So what is the public health order? Well, what just happened Sunday night, Monday morning? The governor issued his executive order that he described. However, they literally copied and pasted all the text from the executive order, and the Department of Health interim director issued a public health order that says all the same stuff. Okay, so what this means is that if anyone violates what Governor Herbert announced, anyone, individuals, business owners, right? If you're not wearing a mask, if you're not socially distancing, if you as an employer are not requiring your patrons and employees to all wear their masks, you are subject to the $10,000 fine. I get there's not a lot of sympathy for like the BYU bros, doing their parties, right? Like that's easy to kind of pick on and say, hey, those are super spreader events or whatever. But that's not what's happening here. This $10,000 fine, this massive fine, applies to literally everyone in Utah, in their home, in their business, as they go about their day.
Go ahead, Dave. What's your take on
You could
Connor?
tell I wanted to say something. You could say.
Sorry, go ahead.
Okay, so the reason $10,000 bothers Connor, and quite honestly bothers me, is every crime, essentially every crime, has a fine associated with it, right? So if it's a misdemeanor, it's up to $500, or if it's a felony, it's up to $5,000. Well, $10,000 fine is a second-degree felony. That's what we're looking at. So if you're wondering, well, what's a second-degree felony? Manslaughter. Manslaughter is a second-degree felony. Enticement of a minor with the intent to kidnap, $10,000. That's a second-degree felony. Assault with a dangerous weapon, that's a $10,000 fine. So when you start trying to figure out, oh, how bad is this? Well, if I'm just looking at the fines, are you trying to tell me that mask wearing or social distancing is akin to manslaughter? No, of course not. It's an overreach. And as soon as you overreach, then you lose people. They look at you and they laugh at you and they dismiss you. They don't take you seriously. So yeah, although a $10,000 fine sounds scary, there's not anybody that is actually afraid of walking down the street and getting hit with a big old $10,000 fine.
I don't think that's intent at all. I do think it's appropriate if somebody willfully violates a public health order that there be a hefty fine involved in that, because you are risking people's health, their well-being. They may end up in the hospital. We know that different people have different symptoms. We don't get to choose our symptoms with COVID. COVID decides for us what our symptoms are. I want to just let you know that obviously the banner that we put up, it says it's sort of almost 10,000, but it is a $10,000 fine that we're talking about. Caitlin, put that banner back up again. I just want to make sure, because I think some people are commenting. Is the okay? It's supposed to be a $10,000 fine too much? So that's the question. So go ahead and comment in the comment section. We know it's a $10,000 fine, possibly. I think where this may make a difference, Dave, is where people are organizing these big college parties, or that desert party that we saw on Halloween, where all that video was posted to Instagram of the kids partying in the desert, mainly mask free. I don't know if there was a few masks there or not, but it was obviously a party, kind of we'll show you, we'll do whatever we want in spite of the spike of COVID cases. We are just in a mess right now with the number of cases that we're getting. And we heard from a hospital administrator yesterday on our show, with IHC. There's a big hospital we all see on 5300 South and I-15 if we're driving that way. So this is, they are taking in a lot of patients, and their staff is worn down, and we have more hospitalizations than we've had, more than 400 that we've had the whole time. So something needs to be done. I think the $10,000 fine is completely appropriate, and I think they should make an example out of somebody.
Okay, so this is where I think the $10,000 fine sounds good. It's not actually good. Say, for example, this big party in the desert, right? As Connor Boyack called them, the BYU bros, right? The BYU bros say they throw this party. They have 10,000 people show up, and they have to pay a $10,000 fine. Well, if they're charging $15 for the party, a $10,000 fine is just the price of doing business. That's not going to deter them. Actually, it probably is good marketing for them. This is why I think there's a better way to enforce, and there's a better way to fine. Are you ready for this? Mm-hmm. I'm not saying don't fine. We do this for seat belts, and we do it for speeding tickets. We do it for parking tickets, right? Debbie, when you get pulled over, or you see people get pulled over, how often do you see them grab their seatbelt and they're trying to buckle it before the cop gets up, Well,
first of all, point of clarification, I don't get pulled over.
Very safe driver.
It's been a long time. It's been a long time. Yeah, sure. You just,
people are grabbing, right? I mean, you get pulled over, maybe you forgot to wear it. They grab it. It's not because it's a terribly expensive fine for not wearing your seatbelt, an extra $25, $30, $50, whatever it is. But people don't want to, right? Going after the after the participants. And it looks like we lost Debbie. Debbie's back. Parking tickets are $40. But they hand out 1 million parking tickets. So we obey the parking rules because we're like, I don't want to get a parking ticket, even though it's $40. It's not devastating, but we obey the rules because 1 million people get it. You charge or you fine someone $10,000, you're not going to hand that out 1 million times. You're going to try to make one or two people the scapegoat and try to say, see, we'll do it. Well, there's no real threat there because none of us really feel like we're going to be the $10,000 scapegoat.
So I just to clarify, your pitch would be more tickets, cheaper price, slap them with a $40, $50 fine.
Yeah.
Make it a pain. They have to go maybe to justice court in front of a judge, argue their case that they want to dismiss. Otherwise, they pay up. Suddenly, if you have a party in the desert of 5,000 people, $50 a pop as you're, handing out these tickets. Now you've collected $250,000, which is some real money. I do think the $10,000 fine is appropriate for the organizers of these events. Why not? Let's get to our Facebook comments. Caitlin, I wonder if you could help us out by putting some of the comments there on the screen. Caitlin, our producer, is always running our Facebook Live behind the scenes. Mere fam. Well, what happens if people die as a result from attending the party? Would it be appropriate then? That's an interesting point. What do you charge somebody with if they've held an illegal party and a bunch of people catch COVID and somebody passes away from it?
Well,
I mean, is it, you hold somebody liable for negligence?
Well, the fine is manslaughter, right? That's a negligent homicide. There is a personal responsibility here. And I think too often we look at the people that are organizing, or we're trying to blame the leadership. But who is to blame is the person that's attending these parties, right? You are personally responsible.
Yeah.
If you go. So don't hold the party organizer responsible. If nobody shows up to the party, then they'll stop organizing parties. There's a personal responsibility here that I think is more effective.
We got tons of comments coming in on this Facebook Live. By the way, Dave Noriega, Debbie Dujanovic on every day, Monday through Thursday on KSL News Radio, 9 to 11. This was a point of discussion during the show today. We wanted to continue it right now with Marcia Bentley. If you don't want to pay it, then don't organize a group. That's in violation. That doesn't even come close to what it will cost to treat anyone who gets the virus there. Excellent point, Marcia. If you're a regular listener of the show, you know we had Cass Ho on the show yesterday. She is a COVID-19 survivor. She spent 2 weeks in the ICU. She's getting her hospital bills now, $125,000. $125,000. She has insurance. Her friend who caught it actually gave it to her. $500,000 in bills. He passed away. He paid the ultimate price. Still, $500,000 for 6 weeks in the hospital on a ventilator. You're right. $10,000 is nothing compared to what some of these folks are going through. Dave?
Well, and it's incredible how expensive it can be, especially if you end up in the ICU. Now, the vast majority of people don't end up in the ICU, right? People are that are ending up there. It can be $10,000 a day. I think that's what Cass Ho, one of our listeners you were talking about, that's what she ended up figuring out. Like when she was on a ventilator, when she was in the ICU, it ended up being $10,000 a day. So yeah, obviously, if you end up in the hospital, extremely expensive. What happens though is you've got a bunch of college kids that are not being affected. They're not ending up in the ICU. They're not ending up in the hospital. They have a few sniffles. And it's hard when it's not affecting you to realize, oh, well, it may not affect me, but it might affect my mom or my grandparent or somebody else's mom or somebody else's grandparent. But when your experience with COVID is, it wasn't that big of a deal, you can see why they're taking it casually.
Well, that's why I like your pitch, Dave. $50 fine. Just a nice round $50.
Yeah.
$100. How about $100? Anybody got $100?
Who can I get 200? 200. We're not an auctioneer here, but I think where you make it is you want it to sting. You don't want it to devastate.
You want to read Ike's comment there, Dave?
But don't those other offenses come with jail time? Sometimes. Yeah, no question. Sometimes it comes with jail time.
You're guilty.
Yeah, obviously. Sometimes you'll plead down and you'll get that sentence suspended or however you plea. But again, the idea is not necessarily are we going to criminalize it to the point that we're jailing people. I'm just saying when you're talking about a $10,000 fine, to give you an idea what other $10,000 fines look like in our justice system, we're talking about some of the most serious crimes out there. Is not wearing a mask one of those most serious crimes out there. No, I don't think so. I don't think it's that. Is it worth a little slap on the wrist? Yeah. And do I think that slap on the wrist will be effective? Yes, I do. We're so afraid to enforce any of this that people just laugh at these mask mandates, Debbie. People that are anti-maskers are laughing at these mask mandates because they know nobody is enforcing it.
Stephanie Newton, these party organizers also market these events are protest parties. These businesses want folks to show up and not wear masks. Thanks, Stephanie. Appreciate your comment. I want to jump off that comment and talk about my experience recently when I went to a restaurant, because you and many of our listeners, Dave, have been encouraging me to get into the economy, get back into the economy and go to restaurants. And I, of course, loved eating out before COVID, and I've backed off and did a lot of takeout. But back to Stephanie's comment, I've actually been in businesses where they encourage, and they have the big signs out front telling patrons to mask up. But when I go inside, it's not enforced to the level I want it enforced. I want to be able to sit at my table when I'm dining at a restaurant, take off my mask, enjoy my food, without having another patron from across the room stand up without a mask on, walk across the restaurant and stand over my food and talk to me. Like any other time outside of a pandemic, of course, let's converse. Tell me whether you love the show, you don't like the show. But I had an experience not too long ago, Dave, where 4 people walked up to me while I was at the restaurant. And I thought, the restaurant has got to get better about enforcing that. So people like me who are trying to get back into the economy and trying to help by eating out more, don't feel like I'm being exposed to COVID while I'm eating my food.
So let me ask you a question. Why didn't you ask them to put on a mask?
We did.
And?
We did. Well, some of them were like, we don't have a mask, or some of them they just kept talking. So I don't see. It's my job to go in and enforce the restaurant's mask mandate sign. I don't want to be put in that position as a patron. That's not why I'm going out to dinner.
Well, it's very much. I've been out.
People who are anti-masking, Dave, they're just, some of them are just itching. They're itching for a confrontation.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I don't know. I don't know what to say about that. Right. I don't think that is the vast majority of people. I think the vast majority of people, if you ask them to wear a mask or, hey, listen, I'm a little uncomfortable with this. Is it cool that we have this conversation somewhere else or farther apart? I think 99% of people are going to be respectful of that. Sure, there's a few people that are just ornery about it. But I can tell you, I've been out really from day one, as soon as they reopened restaurants and movie theaters, and I haven't seen any of that. I haven't seen any problems, and I think largely people are being respectful, and restaurants are following the rules. Again, if you're looking at perfection, you're never going to get perfection. You're never going to get that.
Not perfection, but I do think a fine will make business owners just kind of regroup with their staff and remind their staff, because sometimes business owners aren't on site. Look, I don't want a $10,000 fine. It's like over-serving somebody alcohol in a way. These business owners don't want to lose their liquor licenses, because that causes, all kinds of problems when that happens. Why would you want to violate a public health order as a business owner, potentially face a fine, maybe even face losing your business license because of it? I do think this is an opportunity for businesses to say, when they hear the governor say what he said, look, it's zero tolerance. If Joe gets up from the seat over there and he walks across the room to talk to Nancy, Joe has to have a mask on. And if Joe's not in Nancy's family, then Joe can't be over at the table right now for the next 2 weeks per the governor's mandate. We're just going to follow the rules. Let's put another comment up. Do we have another comment, Kaylin? Go ahead, Dave.
Would $50 or $100 make a difference? People still park illegally. Yeah, you're right. There are people that will not abide, no matter what, right? I have no doubt, Debbie, that some of these organizers, they want the lawsuit. They want to end up in court. They want to fight it, and they want some court to rule on whether it is constitutional to impose this mask mandate, because there's an argument to be made that it's unconstitutional to require that. A lot of people, I think, a lot of these organizers are like, do it. I dare you. I double dog dare you. But I think mostly, I think people, when you break it down to, well, guess what, Debbie? Cough up your $50 or cough up your $100. It's a sharp reminder. Sharp enough.
And it's a pain, right?
Yeah.
When you get a parking ticket, who loves going to City Hall? I mean, maybe they're not doing it that way anymore. But seriously, when I got a parking ticket, the last time I had to go into City Hall and stand in a long line and then explain, what happened to see if I could get out of it. Anyway, it just creates a little bit of a pain. So you feel it. Okay, another comment. Let's get a couple more and then we're going to jump off here. At what risk are we willing to place employees to force people to wear masks? I totally agree. That's a total... And young employees. So today, if I was an employee at the bank I worked at when I was 18, or the sundries store, little convenience store I worked at when I was 19, or the men's clothing store that I worked at for 4 years during college, I would be a different person. You know me, Dave. I'd be like, no mask, no entry.
Yeah.
And I would show them the door. But especially the younger employees, that worries me about them having to be the bad guy at the front door telling Joe and Nancy they got to mask up before they come in.
Well, and especially if the customer starts getting belligerent.
Yeah.
I remember, you don't watch movies, Debbie, but I'm gonna throw out this movie. I remember the movie Batman. You've heard of Batman before, right? The Dark Knight. The movie.
I didn't see that one. Was that Michael?
No, Debbie. The Dark Knight was Heath Ledger. He won an Oscar for it.
Okay. Sorry.
Okay. Amazing movie, by the way. But what happened was, it was a completely filled theater. Some guy just walks straight past the ticket dude, walks right past and sits down in his seat. And you have a 16-year-old that's chasing him and saying, sir, I need your ticket. Sir, where's your ticket? And the guy just ignored him. He's like, no, I'm fine. Don't worry about it. I'm fine.
And the kid, sorry.
Yes, he was a 16-year-old. This poor 16-year-old is this belligerent adult that just walked straight in and sat down. And finally, the kid just left. He just left. And it was so supremely embarrassing and awkward. And this guy is just the biggest jerk ever. But you're going to have that. If you have restaurant employees trying to enforce this, telling people to mask up, you're going to have this super awkward confrontation. And we've seen it. We see it all the time on social media. People are recording it. And people are going in there looking for a fight, looking for the confrontation.
Who's got time?
I know, right? Just wear a mask.
I just want to go out to dinner. I don't want to be met at the door by somebody who's angry. And I think we've had a great conversation.
Yeah.
Once again.
There you go. $10,000. I think it's certainly too much. I think there's better ways to do it. My biggest complaint all along has been these toothless mask mandates. If you're going to have a mandate, will somebody just enforce it just once, please?
Oh.
Otherwise, just leave it alone and stop pretending like this matters.
And if it gets enforced, the person who gets slapped with a fine, please call the show so we can chat it out.
Yes. And we want to hear your sob story.
All right, we're back tomorrow morning at 9 on 102.7 FM. And if you're not around a radio because maybe you're working from home, you can always say, Alexa, play KSL News Radio, or you can download the KSL News Radio app. We've got all kinds of options. We're at wherever you're at every single day. So, and right now, right at 12:35, live mic with Leland.